Hello and welcome to another episode of Mole Reacts, this time with Firearms Expert Reacts to Metal Gear Solid 5's guns. And well, what can I say? Normally we would do this live on my main channel over at ChaosMole. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to do that anymore because YouTube is not very happy when you are showing real guns on the live stream. So we are now doing this as a video format. And this one is really interesting for me because I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. I loved Metal Gear Solid 5. I have to admit, not really a fan on the whole story thing and all, no spoilers here, but that's a different topic. But I'm really interested in what a real firearms expert has to say about the weapons in the Metal Gear Solid 5 series, because Kojima and the Metal Gear series has always been tooting their own horn in how close to realism they try to be, at least when it comes to some of the animations, the weapons you see in the game. And let's see if they can keep this up. Shall we?
A look at the weapons of Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh, Tranquilizer 1.
Now this is not too far removed from a real pistol design, as I'm sure some of you will already know or have spotted. The AMT Auto Mag.
This
big
one.
old honking Magnum pistol.
Damn.
Now, this thing does depart from reality in a number of ways, not least, it appears to have a sort of P38-esque slide rather than an internal bolt like the real Auto Mag, but the external look of the thing is pretty close to the real thing. Where
Smaller.
it really parts company, of course, is in being a suppressed tranquilizer pistol.
Yes.
I'm not aware of a suppressed version of the Auto Mag, and we've got a laser module on the bottom of this thing. Unless you squinted, you probably wouldn't even pick up on its design heritage. Now, I'm not an expert on tranquilizer guns. What I do know about tranquilizer guns is they do not take instant effect. Drug has to enter the bloodstream and pass around the body.
Especially,
effect, and you don't instantly get knocked out. You become drowned.
What a lot of people do not know is in the game, I'm not a weapons expert. I see myself more like a gaming expert, quote unquote. In the game, it depends also like where you hit the target. And weirdly enough, whenever you do a headshot, you will knock them out instantly. If you don't hit them instantly, or well, you don't hit them in the head, it will not be instantly, and it takes a while as he is describing it. But it was always weird that headshot, oh yeah, they're out immediately. And it's like, but okay, cool gameplay element, but as he says, doesn't really have anything to do with real guns, right?
Unable to stand and
would be fun,
fall
though.
over. In which time you could have emptied your firearm at your man here quite comfortably. Otherwise, we'd probably fight wars with magic tranquilizer guns.
Probably. Oh, the slowdown. The cheat mode, as some people called it in the game.
Right, we have an AK-esque thing, but there are definite design cues here. Notice the pistol grip and the lower receiver from the VZ58, the Czech VZ58, which is actually quite different from the AK in terms of how it operates. Otherwise, though, it's kind of a fudge of different AK-based systems. The overall impression is maybe a bit AKS-74U. The ribbed handguard that really makes this look.
It helps people
is, I don't know, it calls to mind
to acknowledge
the
what it is.
Vega derivative of the AK. Yeah, I don't know. I could list AK variants all day long, but I don't think any of them are a very close match for this, to be honest with you.
I think that's also what they're trying.
The stock looks quite a lot like the one on the Hungarian AMP grenade firing rifle, it's a derivative of the MD65 intended to also launch grenades, and so the butt stop actually reciprocates. It's not for adjustment; it slides as you fire, and this looks pretty close to that. So what we have here is a sort of legally different AK.
Yeah, legal reasons where they know they don't get into trouble. A revolver, or Tornado 6 as they call it here.
Right, so what little I do know about this game is that revolvers figure pretty heavily as signature weapons for a couple of the main characters. This looks very chunky, very heavy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole character called Revolver Ocelot.
Receiver, the barrel with the massive rib on it. It's pretty fantasy stuff. The ability, special ability, that this particular weapon can ricochet bullets off walls. I'm not sure why it would be specific. Why that would be specific as a trait. Bullets either ricochet or they don't. You can specifically, or deliberately I should say, ricochet bullets. Well, in a riot control situation, less lethal rounds are sometimes bounced off the ground to ensure that no one is struck in a lethal place. But it's a very, very, very rare
and got hit in the dingle.
It's not weapon specific.
Not lethal, but not fun. This gun.
Right, another sort of, I'm going to say
fantasy.
Legally different. I have a feeling there's probably more to do with creative license here than legal issues. Suffice to say that this thing evokes the FN FAL, or maybe the FN Cal, or the FN FNC. I think it's supposed to be in 5.5.6. So yeah, bits of all of those really. Although the receiver is kind of a bit busy looking. Something we see in video games is a sort of sometimes an over designing of lines and angles and curves,
because they want to show off the animation, right? Like how they reload the weapon. It's like, oh, have you seen the animation of the reload? Looks so cool.
To a point, you know, with things like the F2000, we certainly are well into the aesthetic fashion aspects, where the insides are doing whatever, and then the casing is shaped aesthetically. But when you're talking about earlier machined or stamped steel designs, they typically are minimalist. Any unusual design features are probably some reinforcement for the sheet metal or lightening cuts to try to make the overall thing lighter. But certainly overall, with the front sight, the gas tube arrangement, the butt stock, and the overall impression, it's very FN for me.
Definitely.
Your suppressor is no longer effective. Bear in mind your weapon from now on.
Calling back to one of our loadout episodes on
wearing down suppressors far too fast.
If you haven't seen it, it's good stuff, I think, and not just because I'm in it. The reason I mention that is we've just had an audio indication, and I think the suppressor must have blown off or something, that the sound suppressor on this rifle has, after a short period of time, spontaneously combusted. Which is not something that happens.
Nope.
You can use suppressors basically all day long, and yeah, they'll get dirty, but not really an issue. You might compromise their effectiveness eventually if you use them enough, but they're not gonna go from silent to loud. It's purely a gameplay thing, needless to say.
And it's a weird one in the Metal Gear Solid series, because in the old Metal Gear games, which are basically playing around Big Boss, which is 3 and 5, which is in the Cold War, the silencers do wear and tear, right, as they just demonstrated, and he explained that is not necessary. But when you are playing the Metal Gear games, which are set in our time or a little bit in the future, right, they don't do that. The suppressors are a permanent thing you have on your weapon, or you don't. And this, wait a second, so you were basically trying to tell me that the suppressors do wear and tear in the Cold War because we didn't have the technology, and then in the future we now have the technology to maintain suppressors all day long. It's such a bizarre thing, because as he explained, right, that's totally not how a suppressor works, but for the Metal Gear games, Kojima and the team basically thought that this is how they want to do it, and I always found that so weird, right? Like, the technology around suppressors has not really changed that much over the decades, right? So yeah,
Don't need me to tell you that.
Weird. Oh gosh, yeah, I'm very curious how he reacts to that monster.
Okay, we've got weapon upgrades in this game, clearly.
Of course.
On this one, a massive optical sight. Almost looks like a modern
Yeah.
low power variable optic. Mounted quite high, very high actually, for the butt stop. You'd need a cheek piece to bring your head up in line with that, otherwise
That
it's not going
looks
to work well. jungle mag,
Kinda cursed.
Taped magazines, a vertical foregrip. Front foregrip. That's the pistol grip design for the rifle. That's something we see a lot. FBI, HRT, hostage rescue team, bodged foregrips on their MP5s. The SAS did it for a while as well. It's a very common thing. You get a spare component and you bodge it on. This is before vertical foregrips become standard. But after things like the Tommy gun, where again that has basically a duplicate of its pistol grip on the front. Yeah, interesting one here. This is somewhat reminiscent of several Heckler & Koch prototype submachine guns of the 1980s and early 90s, I think. SMG-1, SMG-2, where we get the MP7's sort of version of the sliding buttstock, seen on the MP5, of course, but where when it's folded, when it's slid shut, it's kind of integral to the design, if that makes sense. And then you're pulling out the back of the gun almost to create the buttstock. The straight mag, the pushpin low receiver, it's all very HK. In fact, even the sights look like they're inspired by those. So this is a sort of what if, if HK carried on developing that instead of ditching it and going with the UMP instead, we might have something that looks like this. Even the fire selector and the symbology on there is also reminiscent. It looks cool. It definitely looks like something HK might have produced as part of that series.
Might have. I also love that it has a German name, actually.
Yeah, so in actual use, we see that we don't quite have the HK diopter set up, and the charging handle is a rather low profile, almost Scorpion machine pistol-esque sort of nubbin, bit chunky.
I have never
used
a lot of SMGs in the game, I have to admit.
HK guns.
Assault rifles
not
were
ideal, I would say. It would work.
Pretty good.
Maybe where it would fall down as a functional design.
Right.
Oh dear. Standard Mad Max-esque sawn-off shotgun, but with a decidedly non-standard, large and bulky optical sight on it, and a huge flashlight on the left-hand side. We can here see these weird proprietary.
At this point, I think the gadgets are more heavier than the weapon.
In the way that they put them on there, so that you're attaching it to something. But in a way, I probably would have preferred proprietary mounts. Someone just drilling and tapping and fitting the actual mount for the thing straight on, rather than implying that this is some advanced clip-on, clip-off system that, if it has a practical way of working, I can't see how it would. More importantly, you don't want a great big optical sight and flashlight on a essentially giant pistol.
Also the range.
Okay, so I take it back slightly, because the bulky optical sight is actually a red dot sight, and old red dot sights were bulky, but still not ideal for a sawn-off shotgun.
Yeah, this looks like
flashlight is
unnecessary, complicated.
I wouldn't attach it to a weapon like this. Then again, I don't know how else you'd hold it.
I have never done those crazy parts on the weapons. I always try to be
one-handed, but
realistically
shotguns aren't really recommended for anything, to be honest with you, especially not without a buttstock.
Right. Using the light machine gun on a horse.
This belt-fed machine gun, despite being 5.56 in the game, is, well, I was going to say it's based on the FN Mag 58, but it's kind of based on the whole FN machine gun family, I think. The furniture is more mini-me. The receiver is pretty close to the Mag 58, but it has more rivets, almost like it's mashed up with a PKM. So what I've done, because we don't have anything that's going to match this exactly, is an excuse to show you a recent acquisition of ours. This is a genuine...
He wants to show off the goodies.
Mod Zero. An actual US military, well, probably not issue, but made for the US military. And we have relatively few firearms of that nature. We often have the same type, but we don't have one with the markings and the specific configuration. So the Mark 46 is minimally
looks super busy.
Belt-fed machine gun in 5.56mm, partly why I chose it for this.
Like, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Resemblance, definitely, with the buttstock and the pistol grip. The great big gas tube underneath is a little bit hidden by the handguard on this, but it's the same basic design as you see there. Being a lightweight design. This has a very short and fluted barrel. It's not on this one. That has a barrel much more
I wonder
reminiscent
how
of
much it weighs.
the L7, the M240. But
It
yeah,
looks
just a really cool, modern,
heavy,
lightweight
but then again, he can
Special Forces
use
LMG,
it and wear it,
and in a funny sort of
carry
way,
it around.
I think this is a better choice than the full sort of squad belt-fed gun configuration that I'm seeing in front of me. But I'm expecting customization that would make this a closer fit to this gun.
Looks cool. Oh, wait.
Okay, pretty
Non-lethal
strong Uzi heritage on this submachine
rounds?
gun.
I've never
Mini
used
Uzi,
those.
to be precise. Similar sort of buttstock, similar sort of receiver shape, but substantially altered to not look too much like an Uzi for whatever reason. The blue, I don't understand, but I'm guessing is relevant to some ammunition characteristic. We've got magazines clipped together perpendicular to each other. That's something we do see in real life. Not done too commonly, but it is done. And of course, with something as compact as a mini Uzi, by putting a big long suppressor on it, a red dot sight on the top, jungle mags, you're making this thing big and bulky as something like an XM177.
Non-lethal rounds.
Carbine, may as well have that and get rifle caliber ballistics. There's something absolutely hilarious about trying to sneak up on guards with a cardboard box on your head. That's amazing. But not what I'm here to talk about. I'm not a cardboard box specialist. I'm a firearms specialist. So I gather that the blue, which I very cleverly, not really, deduced was some sort of ammunition type. Funnily enough, it is the same sort of shade of blue that's used for HK's plastic training rounds and simunition, things like that, to make sure that the weapon you're using, you know what it's set up to fire and you don't accidentally involve any live ammunition. Here, the idea is you're using effectively training ammunition to less lethally incapacitate people, which is not possible and not a good idea. This has no connection to reality. Well, the only connection it does have, of course, is right weapons that are less lethal that shoot some sort of polymer, once rubber, sometimes nylon. Those, though, are something like 37, 40 millimeters and are big and heavy to give you that impact to actually have any kind of effect. Pain compliance, essentially, is how those work. If you need to go less than lethal, a beanbag shotgun, taser, there are various options out there, but in this scenario, it doesn't make
especially with those small rounds, and if the enemies are still armored, it's basically like, does it do anything to them? Probably not. Especially through a Cavalier vest, you are not
next up,
doing any damage there.
Green furniture, I approved of that. That was a thing for a while. SA-80 is still wearing its green furniture, or at least some of it. This is very reminiscent of the SIG series of rifles.
Yeah.
A little bit of G3 thrown in, and it's got
definitely some G
less lethal barrels attached. You will see this. It's probably what it's based on, actually. Sometimes they'll replace the whole barrel with bright blue or bright yellow if it's blank firing, and then swap the barrel back in for lethal purpose.
Right through
Sniper
the helmet.
rifle time. Big old chunky thing. I would assume this is meant to be 50 caliber. Big old break, heavy barrel, very long magazine. Everything about this thing is big. Weirdly, the scope looks out of proportion and too small, but neither here nor there. The only immediate thing that comes to mind here is how bulky and blocky that stock is. Then again, this thing's ahead of its time based on when this is supposed to take place. This is very, very close to an Accuracy International AW50, which did not exist in this time frame. Functionally, I don't see why it wouldn't work, except that the magazine is very, very embedded in that big blocky.
I totally forgot that you can do that.
Thing, and would be a little bit hard
and
to
the tower
extract.
goes boom.
Typically, rifles will have, or rifles like this will have more exposed magazines, because you have to lever them out somewhat, and there isn't room for the levering, as far as I can see.
Oh gosh, I remember that thing.
All right, well, I can see the bones of a GP25 or that series of Soviet-designed grenade launcher in this thing, but yeah, it's pretty cursed. I'm not aware of a standalone grip stock for these.
I don't even.
But even as I say that, I'd be surprised if there wasn't one. They were designed as underbarrel launchers for well, the AKM and then the AK-74. This one's Bulgarian. They attach to the bayonet, or a secondary in this case, bayonet lug with a push catch. So they're somewhat quick to attach. You definitely fit them.
I definitely have to say, when it comes to like fantasy weapons,
I can demonstrate. This is clear. It's muzzle loaded and then double.
Metal Gear Solid 5 is definitely the series with the most weapons, and I think the most unrealistic weapons as well. Like when you were going back to like even 4, which had quite a bit of weapons, and I was just watching a playthrough again from 4 a while ago, and 4 was dealing mostly with real weapons, if I remember that correctly. Like there were even like M4 and all that. Like they definitely had like the real weapon designations and the real weapons. And then with 5, they did go like crazy, bonkers, fantasy. And I don't know what the reason for that is. I would love to see him doing a comparison to 4, and I'm still a little bit surprised by that.
Double action trigger. So you pull back and you can see it. All it's doing is dragging the hammer back and letting it fall. Very simple mechanism. And that has to be in line with the breech. Well, it doesn't have a breech, but with the back of the barrel for the firing pin to protrude and fire the semi-caseless round. Which is to say that multiples of them, of the barrels, with nothing directly behind them, cannot be fired. So this is a non-functional design other than the barrel that's in direct line with the trigger mechanism. So really, you'd need some kind of fairly sophisticated linkage to deliver enough force to the firing pin to fire off. Well, you need a second hammer below this hammer, operated by both triggers, and I'm not seeing a ready means of achieving that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, again, that they move away from reality that much.
Ooh, right, Bullpup. This is definitely in my wheelhouse. This is not based on anything British. This is a really quite interesting mashup of G36, French FAMAS, maybe the G11 as well in the lower receiver area. Quite a sound-looking design. I like the fact that they describe what bullpup means. That's nice. As to it enabling quicker aiming and firing, that's debatable and is being debated all the time. I don't think I'm going to weigh in on that one. Well, okay. So
he does it anyways.
What I can't really argue about is that it makes it.
Okay, here's another gameplay throw-in for me. Sorry for interrupting him. That's kind of rude. Like one of the things with the 5th series I can see is probably Kojima wanted to move away more from being too close to reality sometimes. Like when you are playing all the Metal Gear games, you listen to the story and you see where this is playing, the people involved, the weapons are involved, and so on and so forth. You realize very quickly how close Kojima sometimes get to what actually really happened in reality. Like Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 4 to a certain degree. Like there's always like a lot of reality sometimes, and Kojima tried for years to make it clear to people that he is just writing stories. He doesn't try to give like some conspiracy theories like more support or anything. Like he's just writing stories, and that's what they are there for, to entertain people. Like he had a similar problem with Death Stranding then, and even Death Stranding 2, where he admitted like, I had to rewrite the whole story of Death Stranding 2 because it was far too close to COVID. And he already had this story, and then COVID hit, and he was like, no, we are not doing that again. And he tries now for years to be not too close to reality, and I assume with the weapons he tried exactly that. This artistic freedom of not having weapons which look too close to the original, and maybe been linked together by people with, oh man, they're even using the weapons from the time, and maybe this is real, right? He tries to detach himself a little bit from that it is easier for him to at least say that this is all based on fantasy. Right.
Easier to fire one-handed, but you know, you're only doing that in an emergency anyway.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I think
dear.
I have never used it because it was so loud and so, yeah.
That's absurd.
It is absurd.
Well, that was absolutely absurd, but lots of fun as well. So, what can I say about a rocket arm? I'm not sure how he's getting it back after use. There's a weird nod to realism there, in that the arm is, I don't know, using compressed air or a small charge to launch it before the rocket motor then kicks in, and you do your thing with it. Sums the whole game up, really. An oddly thoughtful and somewhat realistic edge to an absolutely absurd idea.
Again, the other games are very different. Oh, the water.
Did he just thank you for spritzing him with water? Wow. Well, what a gun to finish on. I have no idea what the context of this thing in the game is. I think even in this game, it has to be a sort of joke thing.
It is a joke.
I mean, the way it's described in sort of like everything else, as though it's a real weapon, makes me laugh. Reminds me of the April Fools we did a couple of years ago. For Splatoon 2. The gun, it looks a little bit, well, it's generic self-loading pistol design, bit of CZ75 in there maybe, I can't think what else at the moment, but then it has a plunger style water pistol trigger. It literally just sprays water.
It's a water pistol.
It leaves a wet patch when it hits, so again, attention to detail.
Send me out on my next mission, boss.
Right, well, a lot of you asked for that one, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, would love to see 4.
Thanks for watching, as
actually.
always. You can always check out the Royal Armoury's YouTube accounts, social media, the website.
Yes,
if you're able
please
to come
do.
and visit us,
They're doing
love you to
fantastic
do
job
that. That's
on...
sort of request number 1 for a museum, really. Come and see us if you can.
Yeah.
Obviously, we understand if you can't, and we're really happy to be working with Gamespot on getting the collection out there, especially for those of you who can't make it. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Yep. They're based in the UK. So if you were at the UK, then check them out. But yeah, that was cool. I have to admit, I think I have never noticed how close they are, or how not close Metal Gear Solid 5 is to the other games. I have never noticed that. I have played Metal Gear Solid 5 for quite an amount of time, and I of course used the weapons, but I never really thought about it, and it was probably close enough that my brain was just going like, oh yeah, I mean, those are some old Cold War weapons I have never seen in action, and they're not really too prevalent, like, you know, when developers are using this odd one out weapon we never hear about and think, oh, this is fantasy, this never existed, and then no, it did. Right, and I have thought the same thing about most of the Metal Gear Solid 5 weapons, but in this case, it was actually all just made up. And the reason for that, well, I explained earlier why I think that is. But with that said, folks, thank you so much for watching. We will be back next week with another Jonathan Ferguson episode. If you enjoy my React videos, by the way, there are tons of them now on the channel because we just had the Game Awards and I put a lot of clips on the channel. But if you enjoy them and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more React videos coming your way. Yeah, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.